Hi everyone, my name's Louisa. Welcome to DevParty. This is a series of online events organised by GDG leads from all over the UK and Ireland. Whilst I'm sure we would all love to be having meetups in person instead of online, it's perhaps a rare opportunity to get to know fellow developers from all over the UK and Ireland, and maybe even beyond, rather than just those from your local area.
Hi, this is Jen Ashley. We hope you will enjoy today and come away having learned something, as well as getting the opportunity to meet and discuss with other developers. You can keep up to date on our other events by following us on Twitter or Instagram using the handle at DevParty_. You can also find us on Facebook, and you can visit our website at dev-party.io. These links will be in the description below. So, just to quickly introduce ourselves, here are the people who organized this event.
Hello, I'm Mamta Gilani and I'm from GDG London.
Hello, I'm Swapnil from GDG Galway.
I'm Casey Nur from GDG Oxford.
Hi everyone, my name's Oscar McCauley and I'm from GDG Southampton.
Hi, I'm Jan Ashley from GDG London.
My name is Karthik Nuli and I'm from GDG Southampton.
Hi, I'm Antoine Danois and I'm part of the GDG London.
Hi everyone, my name is Goran from GDG London.
Hi, I'm Jason from GDG Milton Keynes. And
hi everyone, I'm Ashnita Bali. I'm from GDG Reading.
Hello everyone, this is George from GDG Leeds.
Hi, my name's Eddie and I helped put together this video intro. I have a YouTube channel focusing on open source. You can always catch me there.
Welcome to DevParty.
Great. Welcome, everyone. There are three of us who's going to be hosting the event today. We've got Casey Nur from GDG Oxford, and I'm from GDG London. I'm Jen Ashley, and we've got Ashnita Bali from GDG Reading. So over to you, Casey.
Right. With regards to housekeeping, There will be 3 sessions, each followed by roughly 15 minutes of Q&A. If you have questions, please feel free to write them into the YouTube chat and we will do our best to address them. The code of conduct is available at the link on the slide. Feel free to tweet about the event using the hashtags GDG DevParty and web.dev live. And those who tweet about the event with those hashtags will be eligible to win prizes.
Okay, we have 3 really exciting topics on our agenda today. So the first talk is about what's new in web by Dion Almeida, who's the director of the web developer ecosystem at Google. The second talk is by Maud Nalpaz, who is a developer advocate at Google. She will talk to us about cookies, same site, best practices, and new debugging tips. And finally, we have a talk about WebAssembly for JavaScript developers by James Milner, who is a full-stack developer at Dent Reality.
So Ashlita is going to be introducing our first speaker.
Okay. So our first speaker is Dion Almeida, who is the director of the web developer ecosystem at Google. And his talk is What's New in Web? So over to you, Dion.
Maybe I should unmute my mic. Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me and see me. It's a pleasure to be here. Very sorry that we can't be together in person, of course. And especially I love getting back to the UK. I actually grew up in Redbridge, which is in Essex on the kind of northeast of London, but hopefully you don't hold Essex against me too much. And it's been exciting to see the Premier League come back. It's doing a lot better with coronavirus than Major League Baseball and some of the things in the US. That's been good to see, and also seeing the cricket's been a little bit of fun in these crazy times. Because I think the word that I've heard an unprecedented number of times recently is the word unprecedented. We've all been in various forms of lockdowns, depending on where we are, working from home, really kind of facing these challenging times. And I've definitely felt that too. We've seen a lot of trends. When we look into kind of Chrome metrics, we see a lot of things that are going on. And in general, just seeing differences such as, there's a lot more streaming of media of various kinds, and that's, for entertainment, but also for education and the like. I've got some kids that have been educating at home, or I've been trying to get them educated at home. And I'm actually pretty proud at the kind of the role the web has had to play. At these times, it kind of makes things very real and concrete versus kind of the abstract to people, really in the web. We've seen key verticals: food, drink, arts, entertainment, health, science. People want information, they want news. In Web Dev Live, we had someone from the California government talk about how they had to kind of rush and build a website to get information out to citizens. There's been obviously a big spike of that content. It's been great to see the web being a key place for it. And so when we were kind of witnessing this and seeing what was going on, we thought it was important to have a place to bring the community together, right? It was kind of struggling a little bit with we don't want to be stressing people out in these times. So we're not looking to, change massive things in the ecosystem and push them really quickly and kind of add to the backlog that a lot of developers were building up already. We were talking to developers on e-commerce, and they now suddenly are linking their systems in a world where things are out of stock a lot faster, and different verticals had different things going on here. But we wanted to pull people together. We were kind of bummed that Google I/O was canceled. although understandably. And so we put on this event, web.dev live, as a way to bring folks together, kind of like what we're doing now. And it was really fun to see the response. We had a lot of folks with questions, jumping in the chat, reaching out afterwards on Twitter and the like. And so we wanted to kind of keep it going. And that's one of the reasons that we're here today. Thanks to all of the GDG organizers. You put in a lot of time here, really appreciated. And for all of you kind of joining the stream, so to think. We just wanted to kind of come, to you and your region locally and kind of reach out. So we had 3 days, and we actually tried something new. This is the first time we've ever done an online only event, and so each day was kind of centered around, one of the time zones. So starting in the US, then Europe, and then APAC. But we actually found a lot of people were jumping on at all times to kind of join in. There's a lot of talks available. Definitely recommend kind of perusing the site on web.dev/live and or on the YouTube channel to see if there's anything interesting there. I want to talk about some of the key topics that came up in the event, just to give you a bit of kind of the highlights from what we talked about, and then you can kind of dive in. So first off, let's talk about Web Vitals. So a couple months ago, we actually announced this initiative, Core Web Vitals. If you've ever been in the Android community, they have something similar called Android Vitals. And we really wanted to bring together the things that we think represent a great user experience. I'm pretty cognizant of the fact that new metrics are popping up, all of the time, and we don't want to, again, kind of stress or confuse the community out there. So we wanted to have a program that brings together the most important parts that really represent that user experience. And so that's where you see, LCP being kind of a hero element, no pun intended, on the loading side. It's like, how do you get something really interesting in front of the user so they don't click the back button? And then FID on interactivity, and making sure that when users are interacting with the site, you're able to see things change in the UI and things aren't blocking. And then for stability, like we've all been in that situation where something's loading, you're about to hit a button, and just as you're about to tap or click, the website kind of janks around and you end up maybe clicking on an ad at times. Maybe some people do it on purpose. So these are kind of key things that we're focused on to make sure that we're kind of measuring the user experience. This is just the beginning. This is the first set of vitals with the first thresholds. The whole purpose of this is to get better at measuring different experiences that are out there. So you can expect us to kind of evolve each year as we're able to standardize more of these metrics. We want as many browsers implemented in them as possible, and get kind of a more real view on what the experience is across more types of experiences. So like loading, super important if you're a publisher and getting content out there. Interactivity, even more important when you've got like a long running application, like a productivity app. So we will get better over time here, and would love to hear from you on what you think is most interesting. Now, Google Search, the team there took these core web vitals, and they announced that in the future, so not right away, again, we don't want to stress the ecosystem, but these will be a base of the ranking that one part of the ranking algorithm that search uses for quality, because again, the whole point of this is to be measuring quality. And the reason I'm excited about this is, A, it gives folks the kind of aligned incentives, but it means that if you focus on these metrics, you get a bigger bang for your buck, as we get more things across Google and the industry kind of focusing on them. And a lot of already third-party products and the like started to surface these, which was really exciting. Now, in the past, we've made, haven't been the best maybe all the time at coming up with a new metric and then having all of the tools available immediately. So we wanted to do a little bit better this time around. So this is just showing that across the different metrics and across the different tools that we have, we want to make sure that you can measure Core Web Vitals across them all. And we're excited about that and want to continue that and even get better over time. Now, switching from vitals for a second, another area that we kept seeing ourselves and very much from the community is there's always a lot of talk about build tools. I've worked on some fun large web projects in the past, and I've very much experienced the project where you have kind of the build person who, oh yeah, you got to change something to the build. Go to Wendy for that one. Go to Frank for that, because they really understand the build, and any change that you make is going to kind of mess things up. And we very much see that with some of the complexity at times with larger applications for sure. And we wanted to help there. We also want to make sure that this is something you live in and your project is in all day long, and it's generating production code. And so we saw this as a massive opportunity when we looked at the web to see, like, if you run things correctly through your build tool, it can chunk things out for you and do all of these optimizations. So we created this website, tooling.report, and this is actually a lot of folks in the UK region, like Jake and Soma, and folks in the US like Mariko and Jason Miller. And they wanted to just kind of go through and, like, what is the latest across the most popular tools that are out there, and how do you kind of understand what's going on? And offer it in a way you can kind of take a look at, I've got a new project, what's new here, what's going on, what shall I choose? If I choose a particular tool, how do I set it up correctly? So it was created with a bunch of tests. So basically going through, I don't know if you've ever seen custom elements everywhere in the past. We did this with web components too. And I really like it because we can go through and kind of define what are the key traits that you're looking for across these build tools. And then we actually worked with the build tool maintainers and project teams. We didn't want to surprise this on them. This isn't about one winning versus another or anything like this. But it's just going through and best representing them and then giving you the opportunity to kind of like understand what's going on. And so when you get a bunch of tests passing, that's where the score goes up. Now, because it's a bunch of tests, it's actually a cool way to kind of see the best practices of what's going on. It kind of becomes a documentation. So if you're wondering, like, I use Webpack and how am I going to set up Webpack to do the right chunking, you can actually go through on excuse me, on GitHub and look through and see how the tests are actually running. So I definitely recommend, if you're struggling at all with different settings for your build tools, things you want to do, it's a great source of information. Okay, let's jump into web developer tools. So we'll start with Chrome DevTools. Again, kind of a tool that I live in every day and all day long. And we'll talk about a couple of the updates. We all know the console, one of the major places between console and elements that I spend a lot of time in. And on any particularly large project, especially one that you kind of in third-party SDKs and the like, my console can get quite messy. It's got a mix of things that systems putting out, these SDKs are putting out, and things that I'm using maybe to debug and the like within the same place. And so we wanted to kind of take another look at that area and focus on, what are the core issues that we want to kind of bring out of the console and have sit in another area for you to kind of go deeper on. Something that we think is really, really important, right? So if you're, your app isn't using a whole bunch of code, could we highlight that and tell you what's going on? So we created this new issues tab as a home to put that in. Now, this is, if you go into the issues tab, you're going to see a whole list of things that are appearing here. Maud is actually going to show us this in a lot more detail, so I'm not going to go through it now, but something that I'm pretty excited about. Now, back to Web Vitals for a second. It's one thing to kind of like see the information, and we have the ways of doing that, in the lab with Lighthouse and field with Crux and PageSpeed Insights and the like. But we want to make sure you can track these all the time and that they can be more actionable. So this is where the DevTools features are coming in. We've got more coming in too. But taking something like an LCP here, we want to make sure it's showing up directly in the timeline for you. Now, we also want to make sure that you're able to see total blocking time. and the like. So one of the differences between lab and field is this first input delay. When it's in the field, it's real users doing things, which makes sense. That's what you want to understand. But in the lab, it's harder to kind of script that together and for us to know what's taking time because it should, what isn't because it isn't. We need to come up with other metrics that map to the results that you see in your field data, and that's where total blocking time comes in here. This is just making sure that the UI thread isn't getting stuck, running a huge amount of JavaScript or something like that. And so I want to make sure that you see when that's happening, what's going on, so you can go in and again chunk it up, make it load lazily, or whatever it is that makes sense for you. Now, the other piece is layout shift. That's the CLS side of things, and we want to make sure you can see when things kind of jump around. And so we're showing the layout shifts directly within DevTools here, and you can go in, click around, and see where is it moved from, where is it moved to, and of course with the screenshots you can kind of like scrub around and kind of see that shift happening, and so that'll help you understand what's causing that particular layout shift, and then you can obviously go through and debug it from there. Now, final thing, this one hits close to me. One of my sons has a color vision deficiency, and so we added an emulation tool that's kind of fun that you can go through and check out different deficiencies, and then it's going to, again, emulate. It's not perfect. It's going to kind of emulate what it would maybe kind of feel like to a user that has a deficiency. And so you can go through here and make sure that you've got the right contrast, the right color contrast and the like, and have things kind of set up to be able to get things just right. I actually used this with my son while we were educating from home, building a website, and it was kind of interesting just to like really empathize and put yourself into your user seat, so to speak. Okay, Lighthouse. We launched a new version of Lighthouse, web.dev live, which is version 6. It has support, of course, for all of the new metrics that we talked about before. And it's got a bunch of new audits and changes to the performance score. So let's start with the score side of things. A key thing here that I can't say clear enough is we love Lighthouse, we love Lighthouse scoring. The goal is to use the scores to improve the site for users. It's not just to get a high score, as much as we love that people strive for that. And so we're always updating the score, kind of every major release. And the reason that we do that is, again, we want to get closer and closer. We're striving for a real mapping towards the user experience and the things that you care about. So we made a few tweaks here, bringing in the Web Vitals scores, taking out some of the old ones, such as first meaningful pain, first CPU idle, max potential, FI, and the like. And so when you run things on version 6, you may get a slightly different score, but hopefully that's taken in as just like, hey, we now have a better view on the user experience, and you got areas that you can dive in now. A whole bunch of new audits. We love adding audits to the product to try and glean more insights for you. We've really focused a lot on JavaScript analysis and accessibility across the audits this time around. So one key here is that we want you to easily trace how much unused code is being shipped in your app, to give you a real view. We've got a whole set of new tooling there to kind of let you visualize everything that you're shipping down that we're excited about. And we have audits to check the screen readers, assistive technology and the like, have all of the information they need to serve users well too. So always excited to add new audits to give you more information. Hope you check that out. Now, you've taken the time, you've optimized your site, you've put in all of this hard work, you're getting great scores. What's the thing you want to do now? You want to keep it that way. And we've seen this, over time, that people put a lot of work in to get their site up to speed, and they need a way to kind of really keep that going. So what we tried to do with Lighthouse CI is give you this tool to allow you to catch any regressions right away before they get to production. So you can go through, enable this. It's also been updated to measure your core web vitals. And so now any pull request that you put in, you can immediately get information on any effects to your core web vitals to make sure, again, that you any unintended consequences there, you can jump on it before you actually deploy it to production. So this is something really kind of exciting to see teams jumping on board, and again, would love any feedback here too. Okay, so switching over from kind of the tooling and performance and web vital side, I want to take a quick look at privacy and security on the web, which is how we're working with the community and everyone out there to make sure the web is more private and of course more secure for users. Now, I don't know if you can remember, time is a little bit hazy at the moment, but when coronavirus really kind of exploded and became viable, became global, we felt this real need to kind of stabilize the platform, not make big changes. And we're actually midway through a rollout of this same site cookie change. You're going to be hearing quite a bit about today. So we quickly kind of paused Chrome releases, also in general, just to make sure that we could, kind of stabilize. And then we kind of waited on the rollout for same site. However, kind of sadly, during the crisis, people were even more vulnerable. A lot of people were trying to do interesting things in a bad way to the users. So now we found the need that, and we kind of announced this mid-July, that we're going to be, and we're starting to roll out these same site changes again, because these are all about protecting users. This is what a modern, safe-looking first-party cookie looks like here. And especially with same site equals lax, it allows you to keep getting your cookies when top level navigations come to you. And more going to walk through this and really help you understand how to secure your cookies. We'll be talking about that next. Now, there's a lot more in the privacy world going on, including user agent client hints. That's all about enabling you to access information about a user's browser in a privacy preserving way. And then we've got new headers as we're really thinking about what's the right isolation model for the web. That's what all of these changes are really about. There were choices made very early in the web's history about isolation and what you can link to and who needs permission for what and the like. And so now we're really kind of honing in and with this COAP and COAP, which are these new headers that allowed you to kind of opt in for a bit more of a special status here, cross-origin isolated. And this allows you to build really powerful features into your site, while also mitigating the risk of attacks like Spectre and the like. Okay, so we're now doing everything we can to help with trust, privacy, and safety for our users. But there's also this really interesting balance on the web where we want to work really hard to keep users safe, and obviously their data private. We also know that you need to continue to get more capabilities to deliver the best possible user experience that you can to your users. And that's where PWA, Progressive Web Apps, and Fugu capabilities are really coming in to kind of push the bar on some of those capabilities. So Fugu, if you're a little bit unaware, or to get you back up to speed, is just really an umbrella for a whole slew of capabilities that enable your web app to do a lot more with the native devices that they're running on. And there's a whole list of all of the Fugu capabilities, where they are in the roadmap, timing, how you can get involved. It's really exciting to see us kind of expand capabilities, again, in a privacy preserving way. So we're getting that balance right. With PWAs, continuing to improve everything we can on that side too, because we want to enable these web experiences that really feel like apps, and they're able to run on the home screen. And when a user taps on them on the home screen, they get what they expect. So there was a lot of new information on what we're doing there. There's actually folks in the UK that do a lot of work on this too. And Andre, a developer advocate in London, built this project called Bubble Wrap that allows you to take your PWAs and reuse a lot of that content in your Android apps. And we see that a lot more these days. I was in an event in India, back when I could go to India, And there was a lot of sharing between the Android teams and the web teams, because the Android teams, didn't want to get all of the same features going. They couldn't A/B test in the same way. And this is what they were using with trusted web activities as a way to kind of share that code, which has been interesting. Okay, that was a whirlwind tour that went through there. Some of the kind of key areas of just how to make sure that we can get the best user experience across capabilities, performance, and making sure that we secure users along the way, and various tools updates. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to chat with you a little bit about this. As always, super interested and excited to kind of hear from you. I'm at DALMAER on Twitter. Feel free to send me anything there too. And now it'll be time for me to pass the banner over for questions, and then for more to go after that.
I think, Ashnita, you're on mute. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, thank you, Jen. Yeah, thank you very much, Dion, for that great talk. It was really informative and very exciting to hear from you. While we're waiting for the questions from the chat, perhaps maybe if you could share with us what tools are you most excited about yourself or in your team?
Sure. Yeah, so some of the key things that I'm excited about, we talk a lot about, vitals and performance of these key initiatives, but I also really care passionately about just like raw productivity and making life easier for developers to build things. So we're doing a lot of work on that side as well. On the Chrome DevTools team, there's actually a sub-team called Developer Productivity that's really focusing in on that across the whole tool suite. And so you see with Puppeteer and the like, we're doing a lot of work in that area to be able to let you run full integration scripts to test across more than just Chrome. We've got support for Firefox and the like, and just really being able to give you that capability. But we're kind of looking across all different parts of the development cycle at the moment. And again, if there's anything that kind of is frustrating about web development that you think that we could help with, we're all ears.
Right. Okay. Just wonder if we perhaps maybe use some of the other hosts have got questions to ask while we wait.
Yeah, so I have a question. You briefly talked about new cross-origin headers. I was wondering if you could touch more on that. I was really interested in the kind of benefits that they offer in terms of security.
Yeah, and I think Maud's going to go into a lot more detail in this world too. But like I say, like the origin model, a lot of things that were chosen in the early web have had big side effects, like being able to have an image source equals something that just loads an image anywhere, kind of by default, kind of set a bar for that type of interaction. I remember when cause headers first came in, having some scary moments. I was helping someone I worked on a backup company, and we were kind of chatting about web developer things, and they're like, yeah, and like dealing with all these headers can be kind of a pain. So we just say allow, star, or just kind of anything to happen, and not realizing that they've now opened things up that on my web client I can just monkey around with data on some networked appliance and the like. And so now with these headers really allowing you to kind of be more explicit on, okay, I own this site, I've got an embedder widget, how do I want these different things to interact in a really safe way? How do I make sure that, okay, for the top, if I'm owning the URL bar at the top, like this is what the kind of cookies that I can get. And so it allows you to like really think through what's your architecture? How's this all going to work? How do you work with third parties? You may yourself have lots of different kind of second parties, so to speak. If you have large series of sites, how can you think through that? And as I say, Maud's going to go into good detail here.
Thank you for that. Okay, we do have a few questions come up on the chat. So first one is from Minfa. So do you cut across Flutter Web? Any update on that progress?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we work closely with the Flutter team. Actually, a lot of the Flutter team came from Chrome in the early days. So we're also a lot of old friends in that world too. And we've been super excited to see them kind of jump on to the website. And they've got lots of different renderers at this point for you to use. So especially if you're building a really rich desktop kind of application on the web, and you're looking to kind of get reach across different platforms in a way that Flutter helps with, we're excited to enable that. So I know it's still kind of, public beta and the like, and they're working hard to get things kind of fully over the line. We're working with them on performance, especially in things like that, because it's able to do a lot of things on top of them. But we're seeing strong progress there, and they just had their Flutter event too, where they talked about this. But it's a big push for them, is to kind of really nail the web side of things. And I don't have anything specific today to mention here, but it's going in a direction that we're really excited about, and we'd love to hear more from you on what you're interested in there, and can help reach that team too.
That's great. Thank you for that. So the next question is from Hamad S. Samara. Have accessibility features been included in new tools?
Yeah. So the biggest area here has been the kind of color vision emulator that I talked about, and Lighthouse having a whole suite of new tools with accessibility. This is something that we're trying hard to think about, how can we really audit accessibility in the best possible way. So any feedback there is great. But yeah, if you run the latest version of Lighthouse, if you look at the different sections in Lighthouse, accessibility was one of the lighter sections for audits, and that's changed quite a lot in 6.0. We've got a lot more new audits kicking in there to make sure that we're helping out. Thanks for the question.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so the next question we have is from, I think, Danish UI Hassan. In future, can we expect some Chrome web tools for backend languages with security in mind?
Good question. Well, we're going to hear about WebAssembly later, which is one way of getting different languages kind of running on the web, but also on the back end too. And so that's one thing that we're investing in, is making sure that DevTools can really support WebAssembly a lot better. So that's one area that we're investing in a lot. And then in general, even things like on the security side, we're working with various open source frameworks, and by definition different languages, to make sure that if you've got a PHP backend, that you understand how to use these security features within your world. Or if you use Symfony as the framework that uses PHP, things are kind of baked in there. So we definitely have some things going on there. Node is obviously a very good partner, but I'm super excited about the WebAssembly landscape. I feel like we are going to see a lot of things kind of explode out of that as we get the new features, threading, this, that, and the other, kind of added to the WebAssembly side, that will enable you to do a lot more with different languages, and then tie together back end and front end in interesting ways.
That's great. Thank you for that answer. Yeah, we all quite excited about listening to the WebAssembly talk from Jason later. So I think that's all the questions we have got in chat. So we'd like to thank you very much for that wonderful talk you gave, and please do get in touch, and you're able to listen to the talk again if you want to catch up on, and have more detailed watch in your own time, so you could watch that on YouTube. So thank you very much, Dion, for your time. Thank you. I think Casey is going to introduce the next speaker.
Yes. All right, so our next speaker is Maud Nalpas, who is a developer advocate for Chrome security and privacy at Google. So she helps developers use new APIs and strengthen their website security. If you move to the next slide. So her talk is entitled Cookies, Same Site, Best Practices, and New Debugging Tips. So you'll hear about new efforts to make web more secure, specifically regarding cookies and other new technologies. Right. Maud, if you'd like to get started, and I will go out.
Sure, thanks for the intro, and hello everybody. So my name is Maud, and it's great to be here. Thank you to Jen and the organizers team, and thank you to everyone who is joining the stream today. So now Dion just shared great updates and exciting updates about the core web vitals, new DevTools and Lighthouse features, and PWAs, and of course how we are working with the community to make the web more private and secure. And one important topic here is cookies. So I want to dig a little bit deeper here, share cookie tips with you, and get a little bit hands-on. And before we really get started, why do cookies really matter? So cookies were created a long time ago, more like over 25 years ago, to bring state into the stateless web. So now with cookies, you can persist user preferences, remember what's in the user's shopping cart, and so on. And now, while this is all great, because cookies can contain sensitive data, this can pose also security and privacy risks. So there are a few things you can do as a developer to make sure the cookies you set for your users are secure. And that's what we'll first look at together, a good HTTP cookie recipe for many occasions. And one step to help developers protect users from certain attacks Chrome and other browsers have taken recently is the same site change that Dion mentioned already. So we'll get into it. But the point is, because the way browsers are treating cookies is changing, it's kind of great to take a look at how you would debug this. And that's what we are going to do in the second part of this talk. So it's going to be like a hands-on live debugging session, a bit dangerous, but bear with me here. Right, so if your website uses cookies...
So Maud, do you have slides, or would you like to share your
screen? Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. Okay, let me check. Ah, that one. Ah, nice one. Okay, can everybody see? Yeah? Okay, good. We haven't missed anything important. So if your website uses cookies, hopefully this session will save you time when you want to secure your cookies. And if your website doesn't use cookies, you can keep coding as I talk to you in the background, or in the future you or your clients might very well need cookies. And I've got something for you as well, because cookies or not, I'm going to show you a new DevTools feature that makes it easier for you to detect and fix security issues that Dion has touched on already. And on this, I also need your help because, like I said, this feature is new, and it'd be really awesome to get your feedback on it to basically see what we can improve. So in a few minutes later on, I'll be sharing a super quick survey with you on the stream chat. So click it and fill it in, and this is helpful for us, and this way you get a chance to kind of help us shape the tools that you're using every day. All right, so now we can get on with this, and like I said before, on to part one, what's in a good cookie. So, oh, sorry, just a sec. There we go. So there it is. This is the base recipe. This should be your starting point, and everything else can be a variation of this. And if you're thinking this looks like a lot, the good news is that most of it is static. So you can set this up as your default configuration. and this is added automatically. And this way your code can remain clean, like, you know, cookie name, cookie value, as you have it. And now the question is, why should this be the base recipe? And this is because every single one of these elements here has specific benefits. So we're going to just step through them to make sure we see what they're about. Right, so the first the host bit. The one thing I want to highlight first is that in this recipe, you see here some of the elements like path or HTTP only or attributes. And host is a bit different. It's a prefix. And one useful way, I think, to think about a prefix, it's a little bit like an interface in TypeScript, for example, in the sense that it sets, it adds basically constraints on the other attributes you're having here. So in this case specifically, host prefix sets up a few rules for us. It sets up the secure rule you can see here, path and domain, which you cannot see, but I'll explain why later. Right, then on to secure. So secure, this means that the cookie will only be sent over HTTPS connections, and it must also be set on HTTPS. And with this attribute, it means that other people lurking on the same network cannot steal this cookie. And one thing I'll add also here is that if you haven't yet fully migrated your site to HTTPS, now is the good time to make it a priority, because browsers are getting more functionality behind HTTPS and also making it you know, very explicit to your users that HTTP is not secure. Okay, now on to the next attribute, which is path. And path goes hand in hand with another attribute called domain, which you can see here because host enforces that domain is not here. And no domain means that the cookie uses the current document origin and does not include any subdomains. And what path means is that the cookie is sent for all requests to this origin. So if you have a cookie for example.com, it will go on every request to example.com, but in no request, for example, to images.example.com. Okay, next up is one thing I should add here. So like I said, with host, we have a little bit of a 3-in-1 because with host, now we have set also secure, path, and no domain. Now, this time on to HTTP only. So what this means is that the attribute will only be sent in request headers and not accessed from JavaScript via document.cookie. So it means that the cookie cannot be stolen by malicious client-side JavaScript, like it could be a third-party dependencies. And I don't know if you heard about this one, but MageCart was like a famous attack where there was this famous third-party dependency that was here to basically make a feature detection, for example, HTML5 feature detection. And this was basically some malicious code was included in there. And as a result, this specific dependency was basically reading credit cards data or, you know, session cookies. So with HTTP only, hopefully you should be protected from such attacks. Right, and finally, so this is a bit of our start today, as Jen mentioned, and this is same site, and more specifically, same site lax. So what this does is this restricts the cookie to only be sent on requests that match the current browser context. So the top level site the user is currently visiting. And what this does with same site lax, we are protected from a cross-site request forgery attack. And I'll go a little bit into details here just so you know what this is about in case you don't. In case you do, bear with me. I'll be quick. Say if you, for example, if you have a blog where users sign in to post comments via a form, you take, for example, this user here on the left that has logged into your blog. So the session cookie here in green, you can see is set for them. So far, so good. But now the cookie is not protected with same site. Imagine if this user was to visit a malicious site like evil.example. That would trigger a post to your content posting endpoint. In this case, the browser would send the session cookie alongside these requests. So it means that when the blog server receives this request, it's going to look like it comes from this user, when in fact the action was taken by the attacker. And then the comment is going to be posted as if it was this user with their name attached and so on. So this is bad. This is CSRF. And now if you have same-site lags, malicious site can still make the request, but because the user is not actually on the sites don't match anymore. So no cookie and no session hijacking, because the server is going to be like, who are you? I'm not posting this comment. All right, so this is same-site lags. And now if we put it all together, we have a nicely contained first-party cookie, which is the best recipe for a cookie controlling your user session set by your server-side framework. Right, and now, like I said, this is the base recipe, which is perfect for a session cookie, but if your case is a little more complex, maybe you need to tweak this recipe. There are like a number of ways you can tweak it, but we're gonna focus on same site for today. So tweak number one is, we talked about same-site lags, which allows cookies to be sent on top-level navigations, but you can also lock things down a little bit more by setting same-site to strict. And with this, I really have to be on the site already, or the cookie won't be sent at all. So this is useful for protecting form submission, for example. Back to our posting example, you can really treat this cookie same-site strict like a write token, and on the server side, validate if it's included on the form submission. This is the first tweak. And another thing is sometimes you do actually need cross-site data. So in this case, you can use same-site none, which tells the browser that there are no same-site restrictions, and it can set the cookie, send the cookie, whenever. This does require secure as well. So now the long-term goal is to stop supporting cross-site cookies and like bring in better mechanisms to enable this functionality. But with this, at least you make the intent to send that cross-site data very explicit. And this is a step in the right direction. And mostly this will definitely help you in the long run. Like, yeah. And just to double down also on what Dion mentioned before. So starting from Chrome 84 stable, which means around July 14th of this year, so like a few days ago, cookies without a same-site attributes will be treated as same-site lags. So it means first party by default. So the one thing to take away is set an explicit same-site value for your cookie, and if you need cross-site or third-party cookies, you can set this with same-site none and secure, as we've seen. This is pretty much it, and this is easier said than done. So maybe you're maintaining more complex websites, and you don't necessarily know how or even why the cookies have been set. So we're gonna now go through a little debugging session. So I'm gonna switch over here and over here. All right, so there we go. So the first thing when you want to debug your cookie is to set up your environment. And here we're going to be using Chrome. Cookies are persistent. So the first thing is you maybe have a lot of cookies hanging around in your browser, And on top of that, your browser settings and your extensions can affect their behavior. And because of all this, when you debug cookies, you really want to start with a clean state. So one way to do this is by using incognito. You can also, use a dedicated profile. But the most important thing is make sure you have no extensions and no specific cookie settings. So this is it. And then the second thing we want to do is to head to Chrome flags in order to basically make sure that the browser is enforcing this new same-site cookie behavior, because we want to, test in the real new state. So I'm on Chrome flags now, and you can look for cookies or same-site. And what you really want to do to ensure that the new same-site behavior is enforced is to check that these two flags over here are enabled, same-site by default, and cookies without same-site may be secure. And once you do that, you'll see an indication to restart your browser. I don't see it now because I did it before, but you would see it otherwise. And another thing that is another flag that is useful if you're into cookies or looking into future cookie changes is this one over here, which is enable experimental cookie features. And what this does is it turns on all of the upcoming changes for Chrome, which is great for like general, future proofing and testing. And now we're gonna actually go and debug. So my colleague Ron set up a test site that we're gonna use to debug the cookies. What this also does is the UI basically helps you know whether your browser, as it is set up, is implementing the new same-site behavior. And here we see we have only green, green check mark. So it means that we are in a good position to go in and test the same-site changes. If you would see here anything, orange or cross or red, you would need to go and check out your settings and check out the flags as I showed you before. Right, and now I'm going to walk you through the great debugging guide that was put together by Lily Chen as well as Rohan, and I'll share the links for this as well as a link to another debugging video that is more detailed. So if you don't follow everything we do right now, don't worry, it's all documented already, so you can check it out later. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is actually open the console, open the DevTools, I'm sorry. Up, and this is the view we would be landing on. So what we can see here already, we can see a warning in the console, as well as here we have this little issues banner. And if you're on Chrome 84 or later, you should see this as well. And maybe a small tip, if you want to check which version of Chrome you're using, you can type Chrome / version in Chrome. This is pretty useful. All right, and now maybe you're wondering, so the issues tab gives you the same information, but much more detailed and much more organized than the console warnings. So you definitely want to go and check this out. So I'm gonna here go to the issues. And the first thing I see here is I'm prompted to reload the page to make sure that all the issues are captured, which I'm doing here. Now I'm gonna here look at the first issue that is showed to me over here, and I can expand this here. So here we see a few things, an explanation about the type of issue that's going on, the affected resources, and also a link to an article that explains in details why this problem is happening. Which is like the new thing in the issues tab, and I think it's super helpful. Now what we are going to do is take a look at the affected resources. So first, the problem is that apparently we need to set our same-site non-cookies with secure, and this is something maybe we have that has not been done. So I'm going to take a look at the cookie here that is affected, and here what this does is it's actually a link. And it's going to take me to the network tab. Over here, let me expand so you can see. Maybe I can zoom this in a little bit. All right, so we can see here I'm taken to the network tab, and it's actually filtered right onto this cookie 2, which was the problematic cookie we saw before. So I'm going to come in and check this specific request. And here I'm navigating to this. Normally you would land on this, right? And then you can navigate on the cookies subtab to see what happens here in details. And here I see already that this row is highlighted in yellow, which is actually the problematic row. And I can here hover this little indicator that is going to tell me more details about the problem, the issue. So here, hopefully, at this point, I have all the details I need to go and fix this in my backend. I have the name, the value, I know what request this is about, and I can go in and add the secure flag. This was the first issue, and then we can take a look at the second issue. So I'm going to collapse this one and take a look here. So here, apparently, we have 2 issues of that same type. Let's take a look. In this case, let me expand. Okay, we have 2 affected resources and 1 request, and apparently one of the cookie same-site attribute was not set or is invalid. So let me check here directly. It's the same request for both cookies. So let me clear this filter here, and I can check out already. I click here the requests link, and this takes me once again to the network tab. And I know that this is the request we're talking about. So what I'm going to do here is, again, take a look more specifically at the cookies subtab. And here we don't see anything yellow, right? We would have expected maybe a problem to appear. Here what you can do is actually check this checkbox to show the filtered out request cookies. And here, there we go. We actually see the problematic cookies. So what this does is that it's basically it shows you all the cookies that should have been included in that request, but ended up being restricted. So for some of these, they have been restricted for good reasons. If you think, for example, of this one here, strict or lax, it's not included in a cross-site request. This is like expected. But we have two cookies here that have a blank same-site value. And this is a problem. Either the value is not here because we didn't specify it, or maybe they have an invalid value. Maybe, I don't know, it's a typo or something like this. So in this case, the browser is treating them as lax as of the new default. This is it for basically debugging via the issues tab. And one last thing I want to show you as well is if you take a look over here at the network tab, if you were to really, you're landing on this page and you want to see an overview of what's going on, a thing you can do here is to first, if you want to visualize the cookies in this table, what you can do here, and I've done it before, that's why you see them, but by default, these two headers here, these two column cookies and set cookies are not here. So you need to activate them like I just did. And another thing you can do also is to kind of highlight potentially problematic requests or requests that have blocked cookies. That have blocked cookies, you can check this checkbox over here. And here what we can see is that 2 of our requests have blocked cookies and not the third one. So we know that this one is not problematic, but the other ones maybe are the problem. So this is basically it for the DevTools debugging, and this is working great for local exploration. But maybe there's a problem that only a few users have been able to reproduce. And in this case, what you can do instead is you can actually go and export the data for a whole series of requests by capturing what's called a network log. And like I said before, there is a detailed video on how to do that by Rohan, and I link to it in the slides, and I'll be sharing them. Right, so we have now seen also, like I showed before, the issues tab in action. And now is the moment for me to basically share on the stream the little survey I told you about the issues tab and console. So click on it, fill it. We would really love to hear what you think about the issues tab. And you will see that this survey is also about the console, for the simple reason that some of the functionality of the console is being migrated to the issues tab to make it easier to actually fix issues. Right. So yeah, if you're interested in hearing more about, security, privacy, payments, and identity, this is a little overview of my team. So we have Rohan, Sam, AG, and me. So just to go quickly over some of the content that's available over there. Like I said, Rohan has been doing a lot of work around cookies, so make sure to follow and check out the content there. If you want to learn more about the issues tab and have a detailed walkthrough, you can check out Sam's video. Another thing is earlier there has been a question around the cross origin headers, I think. So you can definitely check out Sam's video, AG's video about this on YouTube, which is about co-op and co-ep. These are the two headers we talked about. And other than that, make sure to, if you're interested in, debugging tips and updates about DevTools, you can, follow on Twitter or follow Chromium Dev for more general Chrome updates. This is it, I think, from my side. So yeah, thank you everybody for listening through. I hope this was helpful, and now I think we have time for questions.
That was awesome. That was a great talk. So it looks like we have one question so far, which is some cyber attacks can hijack cookies and enable access to our browsing sessions. The danger lies in their ability to track individuals' browsing histories. Is it true?
So I think just a second, sorry. All right. Some cyber attacks can hijack cookies and enable access to our browsing session. So it's possible for some attacks to indeed like access your session cookies, and by doing so, yeah, like they would be gaining information, and like actually the biggest risk is really session hijacking in this case, which is really a little bit like back to the example I shared about more or less impersonating a user in this case. So that's what would happen.
So one question I was curious about is when, so you talked about same-site lax and same-site strict. I was wondering when are good examples of like when to use each one in an application?
Sure. So the gist of it is really that same-site strict is really stricter. So in general, the same-site lax is working great for in general session cookies, right? Which means that, for example, if you first log in, if you first land on a page, you want to be able to access your login experience. In this case, same-site lax is gonna be the way to go. But if you really want the user to really be on the site for this cookie to be shared, specifically back to the form example to post a comment, in this case, you might want to go in and actually use same-site strict. That would be a better fit.
Mm-hmm. All right, another question. So it looks like some sign-ins from Google and others have been affected by browsers setting same site by default. Do we have to wait for auth providers to fix this, or is it possible to whitelist?
I think I would be out of my depth answering this question. I can like look it up, find the answer, and get back to you. Maybe Jonathan, if you can like ping me on Twitter, and I'll make sure to get back to you on this.
Mm-hmm. Right, I can bring in the other hosts and see if they have any questions.
I don't really have any question as such, but I really did enjoy the talk, and I think I have to go through and follow it in more detail and take notes, really. So if you're happy to, is it all right to get in touch with you with further questions after revisiting your video?
Yes, definitely. And like I said, I'll link to a few resources for cookie questions. You can also ping Ron. But yeah, of course, definitely. I think my Twitter handle was shared over here. But yeah, happy to do it here as well.
Thank you for that.
Here on the chat. All right.
Yeah, I don't have questions as well, so thanks, Maud, for that.
I think there is one more question on the chat.
Oh, it's there. Perfect.
Right. All right, another question. What are your challenges with same site when a user uses different browsers?
So what I know is, as of now, the same site lax effort is part of an overall effort that's called incrementally better cookies. So what Chrome is doing with same site lax by default, Firefox is doing it as well. Edge is planning on doing this. So I know that there is this movement in this direction. On top of this, I can what I can do also, what I will be sharing the slides is a repo that shares a few examples on making sure that you set your same site cookies in a way that is compatible with different environments. So that would be my answer here.
All right. I think that's all for questions, unless anyone has any last minute ones. But thank you so much for your talk.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right.
Okay. So we're going to move on to the next speaker. James, let me bring in James.
Hello.
Okay, so James is a GDE on web, and he's going to be talking about WebAssembly for developers.
There's gonna be again a chance to ask questions at the end. So make sure you post your questions, and we'll go through them at the end. James, over to you.
Cool, thanks. I'll just try and share this tab. Cool. Is that, I can't see now because I'm on a separate tab. Is that all okay, Jen? I'm going to assume that it is.
Yeah,
cool.
We can see it. Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, let me get started then. So yeah, hello. Welcome to my talk, WebAssembly for JavaScript developers. It's great to be here. It's always a pleasure to be involved in the GDG events. This is my second time doing a talk online, so I'm still adjusting to it, hoping that I don't get any doorbell intrusions or anything like that along the way. It's also my first time giving this talk as well. I have a little bit of a confession to make in that a few weeks ago, I've been wanting to kind of give a talk like this for a little while around this topic, and I came up with this title, and I was pretty feeling like pretty happy about it. And then last night, I was looking at some other like WebAssembly videos on YouTube, and I realized that Surma and Deepti from Google had given a talk entitled WebAssembly for Web Developers. So yeah, after that, I was not feeling quite so smug about my title. So yeah, I'm aware that there's probably a little bit of overlap there, but I think the focus is different. So hopefully, even if you've seen that talk, that there should still be something to kind of take away from this. So a bit about me. My name's James Milner. I'm a full stack developer at a company called Dent Reality. And so Dent Reality is kind of hoping to bring the benefits of online shopping to the in-store experience by we're building an augmented reality platform that is kind of trying to help users find and navigate towards products and give like recommendations, like using augmented reality to help kind of facilitate that and build like a compelling user experience. So there I work on the web application that powers our mobile app and also allows the stores to create indoor maps and ingest their product information into our system. As Jen mentioned, I'm a Google developer expert for web technologies, which is why it's doubly exciting to kind of be here and be giving this talk today. And lastly, you can find me blogging at jameslmilner.com, or you can find me on Twitter at jameslmilner. So let's get started. So firstly, before dive too much into the latter part of this talk, I really wanted to start by giving sort of a primer to what WebAssembly is and kind of thinking a bit about why it's useful or why it's kind of come about. And I think a good place to start with that is thinking a little bit about the history of what like preceded WebAssembly and like why it kind of formed in the way it did. And I think sort of like historically, there's been this strong desire to write native code to leverage its kind of performance and the ecosystems around those languages and use them kind of in the browser. So historically, we've had things like ActiveX and also the Netscape plugin API, which supports things like Flash, Java applets, Silverlight. And then more recently, we've had the Google native client and the associated APIs, which allow you, which is like a sandbox to run compiled C and C++ code kind of in the browser. And there was a similar kind of initiative from Mozilla around this thing called AssemblyJS, which is this strict subset of JavaScript, which you can compile from C and C++. But it's still just JavaScript, albeit it has slightly better performance because of that strict subsetting of the types that you can use. And so I think like WebAssembly was really inspired by these attempts, especially by sort of AssemblyJS and this kind of desire to write sort of sandbox native code like in the browser and not just have to write using JavaScript. So let's think a bit about like what is like WebAssembly at its heart. And so at its heart, like WebAssembly is this low-level assembly-like language that has this compact binary format. And it aims to run in kind of with a near native performance. And And the cool thing about this is that because of the low-level nature of the design and the agnosticism of a lot of the design principles, it kind of becomes this compile target for the web and also beyond the web as well, which is super exciting, at least I think. Because like traditionally on the web, at least in browsers, like we could only really write JavaScript. So WebAssembly provides this outlet for us to write like other languages without kind of breaking out of the sandbox of the browser too much. So let's talk a bit about some of the design goals, or like these are the ones that I picked out and I thought were like the most important in terms of WebAssembly's design goals. And that is fast, safe, and portable. So fast, like I said, it aims to provide sort of near native performance, but also to provide consistent performance. So with JavaScript, JavaScript is passed into an abstract syntax tree. It's initially executed in an interpreter, then progressively optimized and re-optimized until eventually it runs at its like maximum sort of speed due to the optimizations. So these days, like JavaScript is really fast, but it still takes sometimes a little while for it to get up to its full speed through all the code paths. And alongside this, sort of different JavaScript engines will optimize different parts of the code differently, and you might end up with different performance across different JavaScript engines. So you might end up with something that runs very quickly in, say, like Safari, and then doesn't run as quickly on Firefox or Chrome, or vice versa. But because WebAssembly is compiled, it's kind of already gone through the optimization steps in the compilation phase, and doesn't need to re-optimize in the same capacity that JavaScript does. And there's no kind of parsing step required there either. So overall, this kind of compact binary format makes it kind of efficient for downloading. I mean, you can stream and compile it whilst it's downloading, which is really cool, and then it's quick to start once you've got the binary, and that's what leads to this kind of fast and predictable performance. The next thing is safe. Like, is your code safe? So WebAssembly code is validated and it executes in this like memory safe sandbox environment, and the aim here is to kind of prevent corruption and security data breaches. So Chrome actually did a study of the bugs that they found, and they found that 70% of them are related to memory management and memory safety bugs, essentially. So it's quite a large problem across various applications, really, is this issue with memory management. And so WebAssembly doesn't have access to the whole process memory. It only has the memory that was assigned to the module, which kind of gives it this security. And lastly, WebAssembly programs are generally deterministic, bar a few kind of defined exceptions. So things like, for example, like threads kind of would make code potentially be non-deterministic. The last thing I wanted to talk about, or the last point that I was making there, was around portability. So WASM doesn't make any sort of architectural assumptions, and it should broadly be supported across modern hardware. And in theory, like, programs can interoperate with both their environment and also other programs in kind of as a design principle, at least, in kind of a simple and sort of like universal manner. And kind of lastly, it shouldn't be really privileging any specific like programming language or programming model or object model. It should be provide this fairly universal way of being like a compile target that can support lots of different types of languages, essentially. And here are some of those examples of those kind of languages. So I'm sure that there are more, but these are just the ones that I thought were it was easy to find references to having some sort of path for compilation to WASM. So some examples of things like Rust, Haskell, C++, and C, Kotlin, Swift, C#, AssemblyScript, which is what the latter half of this talk will actually be about, and also Go. So the main ones you've probably heard of when you're looking around WebAssembly is around C and C++, with things like mscript and also Rust. And you may have heard of AssemblyScript as it's kind of growing in momentum and becoming more and more popular. But yeah, it's also important to say here that the support for compiling to WebAssembly is not like, the developer experience is not like universal. Like different languages will have different approaches to how they handle that and how they support that. So it's important to bear in mind that, yeah, it's not a universally smooth experience. There's going to be different, you're going to get different experiences depending on which language you end up picking. And so the number one question that I seem to get asked, or I've seen kind of float around about WebAssembly, is will it kind of replace JavaScript in terms of the kind of web side of things? And to me, the answer to that is quite simply like, no, I don't think it will. And I don't think it's essentially like WebAssembly's goal either. I think WebAssembly is very good at specific types of tasks, and it is certainly useful for kind of potentially optimizing certain code paths within your kind of application, especially areas where you need like fast kind of predictable performance and you're doing potentially lots of data intensive sort of operations. But I don't think its goal is to replace JavaScript. I think its goal is to kind of, at least in the browser, to sort of augment JavaScript and offer another set of possibilities or another way of doing things, essentially. And some things I think that WebAssembly really shines at, or where I feel it will, you will get a lot of benefit, is around things like games, 3D mapping, or even 2D mapping, because it's still dealing with a lot of data, things like image manipulation or video manipulation for similar sorts of reasons, like dealing with lots of numeric data, things like audio software. Like all of these kind of applications will benefit from, or potentially could benefit from leveraging WebAssembly. Also, in the WebAssembly specs and proposals is support for SIMD, so single instruction, multiple data. So if you have lots of data and you're doing the same operation across the whole matrix or array or whatever it might be, then it will speed up that function essentially. And similarly, WebAssembly also has thread support. So this will allow, you can do multi-threading applications inside the browser, and also outside of the browser if you're using WebAssembly somewhere else, like potentially in Node or something like that. And in the browser, it will leverage shared array buffers and atomics so that you can share data between threads as well, which is important and quite powerful, because passing data between like workers in the browser can be quite painful, especially if that the data that you're passing around is quite large, because you're having to copy between different threads and potentially also the main thread. And then kind of on the Node side of things as well, I think there's a real benefit for replacing sort of native modules in Node.js, because once you've compiled it to WebAssembly, in theory, the Node can just leverage the WebAssembly modules rather than having to use a compiled module for different platforms. So that potentially could benefit the Node ecosystem in that way as well, which I think is cool. Because Node.js has WebAssembly support from version 8, so which is now past end of life anyway. So in theory, it could work as quite a nice mechanism for reducing the necessity for native modules, essentially. Okay, cool. So this is all great, but like how, as a JavaScript developer, can you get started in building or writing a WebAssembly application today? And I think on the surface, like WebAssembly kind of brings up ideas of assembly, and it feels like it's quite a low-level or complex concept or idea. But I think what's interesting is that WebAssembly, in my mind at least, essentially is like more of a compile target than it is a language which you would write from scratch to build an application. Like I'm sure you could do that, but I'm sure it's probably not particularly advisable or particularly fun either. So I think this is especially true as we see like high-level kind of dynamic languages becoming more and more popular, especially languages like JavaScript. So JavaScript was ranked the #1 most popular technology by in the Stack Overflow survey last year. And interestingly, TypeScript was also ranked at #10. So I think I want to hover on that idea of TypeScript for a little bit because it will kind of segue into what I want to talk about next. So TypeScript's become this very common development tool for JavaScript developers. And so TypeScript is this static type annotations that you can add to your JavaScript. So if you pass the wrong type to a function, for example, if it was meant to take a number and you give it a string, then the static type checker will tell you that you've done something wrong, essentially. And as far as I can tell, TypeScript seems to have kind of won this static type checking wars. There was another project out there called Flow, which I'm still used, and I'm sure there's still a lot of people using it. But TypeScript seemed to have kind of taken over it in terms of mind share for developers, at least. And so, yeah, I thought this was interesting because of what I was saying about WebAssembly. Like in and of itself is perhaps quite a low-level and complex language, but something like JavaScript and TypeScript are quite commonly used and are quite widely accessible. And also, if you are a web developer, there's no guarantee that you know things like C, C++, or Rust. So, things like JavaScript and potentially also TypeScript might be sort of, well, hopefully a sort of second nature to you. And so this is why I think this language called AssemblyScript is really exciting, and I think it's a really powerful concept because it means that you can take a language that you're already kind of hopefully familiar with, which is TypeScript, and you can take that syntax and you can write in AssemblyScript, which is essentially very, very similar, and allows you to compile to WebAssembly. So there's some slight differences between AssemblyScript and TypeScript, and you can look at those in detail on their documentation on their site. But essentially, they're very similar in a lot of different ways. And not only this, but AssemblyScript kind of sits nicely in the web ecosystem. So it's on GitHub, it uses NPM. You can just use NPM to install it into your project, NPM being Node Package Manager. So overall, I think it kind of provides this great source language for WebAssembly development, especially if JavaScript and TypeScript are your kind of primarily go-to languages. And what's also cool about it is it's increasingly like snowballing in terms of support. So it's a relatively new project, but it has a really strong contributor base, quite a strong sort of active Discord channel, and it has some really fantastic, corporate kind of sponsors behind it. So people like Fastly that do who are going to use it for things like edge computation and like building serverless applications on the edge. Shopify, who use it for sandboxing user plugins. They use it for like allowing customers to write like custom logic discounts. So you can apply different promotions to different items and so on and so forth. It's a really great talk on that on YouTube, which you should check out. And also Near, who I'm not super familiar with, but as far as I understand it, they allow you to write decentralized like applications for kind of the non-blockchain developer audience, and they allow you to write smart contracts using AssemblyScript, which is why they are invested in it kind of prospering basically. So what I want to do next is kind of dive into what it would be like to write a kind of basic WebAssembly program using AssemblyScript, or how you would go about writing a program using AssemblyScript. So I'm going to assume that at this point that we have like Node.js installed and npm is working all as it should be. And first thing we're going to do is just initialize a npm project and just go ahead and type an npm in it, and it should allow us, and you'll get some feedback asking like how you want to structure or scaffold that, not scaffold, but like the configuration for the npm package. And you can just use the defaults, or you can go ahead and type out fill it out how you wish. The next thing we're going to do is install AssemblyScript itself. And then we're going to go ahead and install the AssemblyScript loader. And this loader will become useful later on as we go to using the AssemblyScript, the WebAssembly module we've compiled from our AssemblyScript in our JavaScript applications. And the last thing we're going to do is use npx just to run the AS init tool. And this kind of does a similar thing to npm init, but it instead kind of scaffolds out the AssemblyScript project. So it will create some folders, and it will give us like a starter file, like a starting file that just has like a function that adds two numbers together. And it will also add the build commands into our npm script itself, which is useful for just kind of quickly getting started, essentially. So now we've kind of scaffolded out the project, and we can dive into a bit of actually writing some AssemblyScript code. So like I said, the initial index.ts file is just a function that just adds two numbers together. So it's essentially this set of code, but only the add function that you see, which is the third kind of statement down there. So I've gone and added a few different functions that just do some various different things. So for example, a function that just replaces hello with hi, when it gets past a string, a function that just sums an array, just iterates through it and just adds up the other items and then returns the sum. And lastly, a function that logs to JavaScript. So WebAssembly modules can accept JavaScript functions or external functions, and then they can be called from the kind of from WebAssembly, and they call out to the host kind of environment. So in this case, JavaScript. And so that's why we have to declare console log, declare function console log up at the top, so that it has a reference to this external function that we're going to call with the number 100. So yeah, hopefully you should see that it's essentially this function. I think would all be valid TypeScript as far as I can think of. Maybe the only two things that would be the ID of, which you can see on lines 3 and 5, and that's essentially so that when we compile the module, it has a reference to like an ID for those data types, so it can match them up correctly. But yeah, so it's essentially very, very similar to TypeScript, and hopefully it isn't a huge jump from kind of writing the things that you might be writing already in JavaScript and kind of TypeScript. So let's say that we're happy with this set of functions in this program, and we want to build it. So what we would do is we just type in npm run as build. And as build is this command that when we did the as init command, it would have added these two commands, one of which would be as build. So when we run it, it's actually just going to go and compile this program and turn it into the WASM binary, so we can use it. And I'm going to show us how we can go ahead and use that binary. But first, I just wanted to point out that obviously the last slide was the things that we're doing are fairly sort of like rudimentary, but it's possible to do some super cool stuff using AssemblyScript. So I'm going to pick on just two examples from the examples on the doc site. So this is just using HTML5 canvas and the and some logic written in AssemblyScript to do like a Mandelbrot set like fractal. So you can do stuff like cool stuff like generate fractals, or another cool example is this is similarly, this is on HTML5 canvas, and it uses AssemblyScript to write it's a version of Conway's Game of Life, or an implementation of Conway's Game of Life. So you can do some pretty cool stuff using AssemblyScript, and there's loads of great examples on the site. So an example of one thing that I did was I ported a JavaScript library called Pixel Match, and essentially what Pixel Match does is it takes two images and it does a diff, like a differencing on those two images, and returns like where those images have changed. And that's quite useful for things like visual, like regression testing. So if you have a web page and you take a screenshot, and then the next build that screenshot has changed, then you weren't expecting it to, then you can kind of say, oh, that's not right, like that button shouldn't be red, or like that button shouldn't have moved, or whatever it might be. So yeah, you can find that actually on my GitHub. It's the same handle as my Twitter, which is just James L. Milner. And it's just called ASC Pixel Match. And that's another example of like of something that you could build using AssemblyScript. So now to go back to loading up this WASM file that we've generated. So I'm going to show an instance of doing this in Node, and I'm going to show how we would do it like in the browser, because there's a slight difference. So here we are going to require in the loader, then we're going to read in the file for the WASM file and pass it in as a uint8 array to this global object, this global WebAssembly module function. And then we're going to use the loader, which I was talking about at the beginning, which allows us to load in the WASM module. And you can see we pass in the WASM module, but we also pass in an object which contains some sort of like configuration, essentially. And so we pass in for index, which is the name of the module. We pass in that console log, which I was talking about earlier, so that it has a reference to that function, so that it can call it when we call it later on in the following promise. And the other thing we do is we provide this abort callback, so that if something was to go wrong on the WASM side, then we can log back to JavaScript land and say that something kind of went wrong. So that's how you would do it in Node. And I'm just going to show you if we were in the browser, like how we would do that. So the difference here is that obviously you can't read in a file. So we're not going to do that. And instead of using instantiate, we're going to use instantiate streaming. And this allows you to, we're going to combine this with fetch. And what that's going to do is it's going to fetch that over the network, go and get the optimized WASM file, and it's going to do it like in a streaming fashion rather than in a kind of synchronous fashion, which is cool. And then we're just passing the same kind of like configuration object in there again. And then again, it's we handle or we can use the module in the returning promise. So that's what we're going to do kind of on the next slide. So this file just essentially goes through and uses all those functions that we've defined. So for adding two numbers, we just use the add. I just realized that shouldn't actually say float sum, because those are actually integers. So that's a slight mistake that I need to correct. So that should be integer sum, but hopefully that's relatively understandable regardless. So in the next, we use that replace hello with hi. And you can see that we have, here we have to use pointers, and we have to create these pointer references to this data on the WASM side using retain to make sure that it doesn't get collected. And then also once we finish with it, we also have to use this release function, which gets provided back from the loader, like from the loader wrapping around the WASM module. And then we can get the string using getString, and then pass it the pointer to the new pointer that comes back from replace hello with hi. And then we're essentially doing a very similar sort of thing for for arrays, and then also a typed array. And then at the bottom, we do our log to JavaScript, which will, in our JavaScript console, will just log out 100. So hopefully that kind of shows how you might go about using the actual JavaScript, using the WASM module in our JavaScript, using the loader. So I know, like, one thought you might be thinking here is that we have to do a bit of a dance when passing the WASM data to and from WebAssembly to JavaScript. And the reason for that is because, as it stands, like WebAssembly only understands sort of like numeric types. So we have to do some transforms to convert between sort of, for example, if we wanted to do a Boolean transformation, we might have to convert it from 1 and 0 to a Boolean on the JavaScript side, and strings, you have to have them as, for example, like UTF-8 encoded like arrays or something like that, so that it knows, it can understand, can like actually take those data types. So that's why you kind of have this dance, or like where you have to have this kind of like wrapping glue code to be able to pass these data types around. There is a library called ASBind from a guy called Aaron Turner, which is really cool, which essentially makes it a little bit cleaner to operate on like high level data structures between like AssemblyScript and JavaScript, and that kind of cleans it up a little bit. And also potentially, hopefully in the future, there will be an implementation of this proposal called interface types, and that will provide like a better way of being, like, basically reduce the amount of glue code between the kind of hosting application and WebAssembly. So this screenshot I actually took from HTTP 203, which is a podcast with Jake Archibald and Summer from Google, and they have a really great talk about like interface types, and hopefully some of the benefits that will bring to WebAssembly in the future. So in summary, WebAssembly provides this safe, portable, and consistently fast language for the web and beyond, which I think is very cool and is a really nice addition to the web platform, and hopefully will just continue to improve kind of over time. It also acts as like this compile target, so it means that you can write in a whole host of different languages and compile down to WebAssembly. So hopefully this will mean that people who are like super all on board with Rust, they can write a program for the web, and they don't have to write JavaScript if they don't want to for the thing that they're building. Or if they Go or C or C++ or whichever language, host language source language you write from, you can. And the last point that I would hopefully wanted to get across is that AssemblyScript provides a super smooth path. Well, not super smooth, but definitely a smoother path than most for JavaScript and TypeScript developers. So yeah, that's kind of me. The last thing I wanted to say was, like, if you are interested in learning more about WebAssembly, I think one thing that has really kind of struck with me over the last few weeks is going back and watching some of the videos from WASM Summit, which took place in Google and Mountain View. And I can't remember exactly when it was, either beginning of this year or end of last year. There's 9 talks there. They're really great, and they cover like a whole host of different topics about WebAssembly. So I think they're definitely worth going back and watching. Yeah, thanks. I think I have time for questions. or maybe I don't know.
Great, thanks for that, James. Yeah, there's a few questions, so I'm gonna bring up the first one.
Cool.
Okay, so do you think that WebAssembly and progressive web apps will replace native apps in the future?
I don't know. I mean, my gut answer would be no, not explicitly. I think it's like a tough question to answer because it's kind of it's difficult to make kind of predictions or estimations about that. What I will say is that I think WebAssembly and the progressive web apps APIs are definitely narrowing the gap between native and mobile applications. And I think, the other cool thing about PWAs is that they, you don't need to be on the App Store. Like anybody can just build a PWA, get some web hosting and get a URL and host a progressive web app the same day. And I think the reach and the speed of which you can get stuff out is super powerful. And I just think that's, I don't know, for me, like I've always been a huge fan of the web. And I think hopefully like as the web begins to, or continues to progress and provide more and more kind of functionality, Project Fugu, like all these kind of extra functionalities that are coming out for the web, it's gonna be more and more appealing to write applications in to build web applications rather than writing an iOS app and an Android app or whatever it might be.
Okay, thanks for that. There's another question here. Is linking C modules possible with AssemblyScript?
I don't think so. But the cool thing about WebAssembly is like one thing you could potentially do is if you have a C library, you could compile it to WebAssembly, and then you could have an AssemblyScript module and compile that to WebAssembly. And in theory, you could get those like communicating with each other, and also like the host environment as well. And when interface types like kind of become better supported, hopefully the kind of amount of gluing together between different types of like a C module and an AssemblyScript module will be like smaller. Hopefully, like the goal is to have it like non-existent. Like you should just be able to communicate between those two WebAssembly modules. So yeah, you can't like use a C module directly in AssemblyScript, but you could definitely get a C module to talk to like a WebAssembly module, or at least get them talking to the host environment and then communicating back to each other essentially.
Okay, the next question.
That one I would have to pass on. I'm not 100% sure on COM. I don't know much about COM objects at all, so I would hesitate to give like an answer at all because I doubt it would be very insightful. Sorry.
Sure. Okay, next question we have. Is there a big difference between the two languages?
So I'm assuming JavaScript and AssemblyScript. I'm assuming that question is the two languages. I'll work on that assumption that it's this difference between, or maybe the question is between AssemblyScript and TypeScript.
If Hamad's still on the
I would assume.
If you can clarify that, but let's assume it's between.
That's
so go ahead.
AssemblyScript and TypeScript. I would assume that's what the question would be about. Thinking about it now, so I think there's just certain things that you have. For example, like in AssemblyScript, you have to type all the signatures, whereas in sorry, in AssemblyScript, you have to type all your functions, the return types, the types of variables, whereas in TypeScript, that can be inferred essentially. I mean, there's a lot of different small nuanced things. It's also difficult for me to say right now because it's like AssemblyScript changes a lot because it's constantly in development. So the differences become change over time. I knew for example, class support at one point wasn't it was limited. I think that's slightly better now, support types. There's a page on the AssemblyScript site. I'm actually just going to get it up and I'll post it in the group. I'll do that after the call. But yeah, there's a page about the slight nuances, I think, between the two languages. But overall, it's kind of like if it was a Venn diagram, it would be very, very comparable.
Thanks, James. So how long have you been working on WebAssembly, and are you seeing a lot of take-up from industry?
It's interesting because I haven't, to this day, I've been excited about WebAssembly for probably a year or two now, but I haven't actually had a chance to use it explicitly in my day job. I think the biggest use case as it stands right now, or I'm seeing a lot of or initially where I was seeing a lot of uptake was around compiling to WebAssembly. So for example, I know Autodesk compiled I think AutoCAD to WebAssembly. They had to do a bit of work, but getting that working, and it's that's probably a product that's being built over I think AutoCAD must be at least the code base is probably about 20 years old. So it's just writing that from scratch is an enormous engineering task. So being able to take an old code base and compile it for the web is just, I can imagine for some companies it's incredibly exciting essentially. I know I actually had a Twitter thread of really of different people who'd used different companies that were using WebAssembly in production. So I'll see if I can dig that out because there's some really good examples on there. Some big names. The big ones that come to my head are eBay uses it for having a web app that you can do barcode scanning, so you can scan barcodes like they do in their native app, and they use WebAssembly for that. Figma use it for Figma is a online design tool, and they use it for their document format. I think Google Earth uses it as part of their engine, in their source code for Google Earth. There are people using it for various things, but on a personal level, I haven't had the chance yet, unfortunately.
No worries. Thanks, James.
But just one last thing on that. I was just going to say, I think I'd see some more growth in terms of people with AssemblyScript. For example, the Shopify use case is super cool. Them being able to write these sandbox, provide their developers with a sandbox to write extra logic and stuff like that is super cool.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interest. I saw it last year when I came to that summit you mentioned, the WebAssembly Summit, and yeah, that happened late last year. So there's been a lot of interesting talks there, and I really encourage people who are interested in WebAssembly to check those talks out. There's also a WebAssembly live conference happening on September 18. That's supposed to in March, but obviously because of the pandemic, it had to be moved. So that's happening on Friday, September 18. Just check out WebAssembly.live. And some of the people that James mentioned earlier, like Aaron, who's part of the core team for AssemblyScript, is going to be there. That person from Shopify, I think, gave that talk that you were referring to, James, is going to be speaking there as well. Someone from Google, someone from Bloomberg, and Aaron, who's now with Fastly, is going to be there as well. So yeah, lots of interesting people to check out from the summit last year, which was organized by Google, as well as WebAssembly Live. Just check out WebAssembly.live, the website, and you'll see the speakers that are listed there. Is there any? So there's a question here from for James. There's someone who's looking for a job.
We are. Not immediate right now. We might be looking for, ironically, an iOS developer at some point in the near future. So if you happen to be an iOS developer, then feel free to reach out. But if you're just interested in talking a bit about like what we do on the website, then I'm more than happy to chat about that. We might hire somebody potentially to help out on the website at some point in the future.
So I'm adding back Casey and Ashnita in case you have questions for James.
No questions for me, but that was a really great talk. Thank you.
Cool. I'm glad.
It was very informative, and it's a new topic for me, so I was quite interested in seeing AssemblyScript, and yeah, so I would definitely go and check it out more. Thank you.
Great.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, James. So for everyone who's still on the call, we're gonna do the raffle shortly. If you can just give me a few minutes to shift the screen to that. Hang on a second. There you go. Right. Okay. Okay, exciting part. I hope. So I took all the the tweets that I saw using the hashtags that we recommended. We're gonna draw 3 winners today, and let's start with that. If hang on a second. Okay, let's draw the first one. And the prizes, by the way, are t-shirts branded with web.dev live, and we're gonna send it to you. Just give us a bit of time to. Congratulations to. I don't think to Hassan. Congratulations, Hassan. So we'll be in touch. But give us a bit of time to do that. Okay, next one. Leon, congratulations. I know you're here because she just asked a question for James. Okay, last but not the least. Maumun, I think that's your Twitter handle. That's probably your first name as well, Mau. Congratulations, and we'll be in touch. And thanks again for joining. Ashnita or Casey, anything else you want to say?
Nothing for me. Just thank you for joining, and thank you to all of our great speakers.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting event. It was great taking part and listening through all the questions and answers. So thank you all for joining us.
So we have other dev parties coming up. We have another Android event scheduled for September 1st. And we have a Firebase event as well this August. We haven't set the date yet. But yeah, we're going to be announcing that soon. And then there's going to be a Cloud Next event in September as well, probably like mid to late September. And the big event that we're planning right now is Webfest London, which will be happening around October 16th. So, look out for those announcements, and hope to see you again in the next Dev Party. Thank you very much again, and goodbye.